The opposite of a fairy tale is dedicated to one of my grandmothers, Josephine Chachlu Yen. Josephine was born in Shanghai, China. She came here before the revolution as a very wealthy young woman. And then the revolution happened, and as with many wealthy Chinese, the family lost everything. And they said, do whatever you can, stay in the United States. So she did, and her life did a complete 180. Later in life, her relationship with her only child deteriorated quite a bit. And towards the end of her life, her husband predeceased her, and she ended up being put in a nursing home against her will. She did not like being there. And she went through a very dark time. She was very depressed. She felt very alone. She felt very isolated. There were a lot of family problems. And at one point she said to me that she felt everything had been taken away from her, and that her son, who came from her own body, in her words, that was the last thing she had, and she felt that he had been taken from her too, sort of by himself. He had taken himself from her. And when she passed away, the last time I talked to her before she died, she was so sad. It was just so sad. And that was the impetus for creating the film, to talk about what elder abuse is and how we can recognize it and stop it.
Elder abuse, it consists of physical battering, financial abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, emotional and psychological abuse. That's considered elder abuse, as well as when a person doesn't take care of themselves. That's considered elder abuse as well.
So elder abuse, the signs aren't always obvious. I mean, we think of abuse, it's physical, bruises, and those signs are really hard to detect. They look a lot like aging, or, people don't disclose. And so it's really hard to know that it's happening, and it's a silent epidemic. People don't recognize it as existing. If you look at statistics, only 1 in 10 seniors have been impacted by some form of abuse. Those are 60 plus. What we do know is that people don't know about elder abuse, so it's actually really underreported. So if that's the underreported statistic, that it's 1 in 10, I can't even imagine the number of people who are suffering in silence. In New York State, only 1 out of 24 cases are ever reported. That means 23 seniors out of 24 are not getting services that they need. So education is the key, I think, to preventing elder abuse. Part of the work that we do is to teach seniors about signs that they can see in each other, what sorts of resources are out there for them, and then also to educate the rest of the public about what elder abuse is, and to take away some of the biases that we have about seniors, that they're limited, and to challenge some of those beliefs. Elder abuse, it looks very similar across cultures, across populations, but the idea of elder abuse, what it looks like, what it actually is, people's perception and understanding very much differs. So if you go ask the Asian community, what do you think elder abuse is, they will probably tell you about the physical abuse, the things that happen. For example, if you're in a nursing home and a care worker is hitting you or abusing you, that's what they consider elder abuse. If you ask them, though, about interpersonal things, emotional abuse, verbal abuse, financial abuse, they don't consider that to be abuse. They think of that as family conflict. It's part of the territory, obligations, and things that should be kept within the family. And so even if it's happening, they don't consider that as abuse. And I think that's the biggest difference that I see with Asian communities.
That is, for Asians, we don't really believe that there's such a thing as elder abuse. In fact, they often don't believe there's such a thing as domestic violence and so forth. We really feel as Asians, because we are not the same as we're Americans, but we don't have the same kind of Western philosophy where we focus on the individual. Here, as Asians, we focus on the family. So what matters is what's good for the family. So if somebody is being maltreated or neglected, which is also an elder abuse emphasis, that's not picked up because it's not hurting the family. It's hurting the individual, but not the family. So they don't consider that elder abuse. The way we work in the New York Asian Women's Center is we really try to connect to the person and talk to them. And by connecting and talking, we get an idea of what the problems are. So that's the way you get to recognize it. The difficulty we have many times with Asians is that they don't want to talk about things that are emotional. So they are sometimes very indirect about things. And the difficulty there is you have to kind of understand what they're alluding to. So you have to think about allusions that they're making that might give you the idea that they have a problem. So if somebody, for instance, if they're depressed, an Asian won't say, I'm depressed. They might say, I have lots of worries. So that gives you some kind of clues. So you don't ask them if they're depressed. You say, have your worries subsided? So you work that way around the things that are kind of metaphorically what it means to be in a situation that's very difficult for an elder.
I really believe strongly that art is an important tool and vehicle to engage people in a discussion about social issues. In elder abuse, specifically, the opposite of a fairy tale, is a really powerful tool, again, because people will read about things, about elder abuse. It doesn't bring it to life. It looks very clinical, there's signs. People can't relate to it. There's a lack of emotions, I think, in the outreach people do. That film is going to be so important in starting a conversation because people can see themselves in the characters. And what was really unique about this as an outreach and educational tool, and an art form, is that it was looking at it from the perspective of the older person. It wasn't looking at it from the perspective of the caretaker or of the hospital or whomever it was that impacting, about the complex dynamics within a family and the actual pain and suffering that they were going through. And it really brought that to life.